I know most of you can't wait to get to work. That's the way I feel. And your job is much more pleasant than mine. That I can guarantee. That I can guarantee. Oh, you don't know what I have to go through with these people. They said to me, sir, a friend of mine, very smart, very successful person. He used to call me Donald, now he calls me sir. He says, Mr. President. I said, call me Donald. Yes, but I can't, Mr. President. Which is okay, he said. So which is the toughest nation to deal with? Is it China? Is it possibly Russia? Or is it maybe North Korea? I said, no, the toughest nation to deal with are the Democrats in the USA. The Democrats in the USA are much tougher to deal with than any of these people that we deal with. They're far more unreasonable, and actually they're a little crazy.
A little crazy.
President Trump yesterday speaking to workers at a Wisconsin shipyard. Important to keep in mind, he's never kidding.
Let's talk about a second term. If you hear in 131 days from now, at some point in the night or early morning, we can now project Donald J. Trump has been reelected the 45th president of the United States. Let's talk. What's at stake in this election as you compare and contrast? And what are your top priority items for a second term?
Well, one of the things that will be really great, you know, the word experience is still good. I always say talent is more important than experience. I've always said that. But the word experience is a very important word. It's in a very important meaning. I never did this before. I never slept over in Washington. I was in Washington, I think, 17 times. All of a sudden, I'm president of the United States. You know the story. I'm riding down Pennsylvania Avenue with our first lady, and I say, this is great. But I didn't know very many people in Washington. It wasn't my thing. I was from Manhattan, from New York. Now I know everybody. And I have great people in the administration. You make some mistakes, like, you know, an idiot like Bolton, all he wanted to do is drop bombs on everybody. You don't have to drop bombs on everybody. You don't have to kill people.
I just don't know, John Hellman, how something can be at the same time so perfectly predictable and yet so shocking. But there it was. Donald Trump asked about his second-term agenda in the friendliest forum possible. He had no agenda, no issues, no plans, nothing. The only thing he said was, I know a lot of people, and then used that as an excuse to attack idiot, I think he said, John Bolton, yet another person he hired after promising the best people, and yet another person, one of dozens of people that he hired in high-ranking positions, only to tell Americans later what total losers they were.
Guest tonight, James Carville, veteran Democratic strategist who rose to national fame with the Clinton presidential campaign, currently co-host of the 2020 Politics War Room podcast. James, it's good to see you. Give me some grizzled political wisdom. Do you believe a single poll out there?
Yes, I think there is a better chance that Donald Trump does not run for re-election than he's reelected. There's no chance he's going to be reelected. And if you just take the events of the last 10 days, all right, obviously he has no control over the virus. He has no control over the tensions in the streets. He doesn't even have control over a North Carolina Republican congressional district. It's just nothing. He's lost control over everything. And of course, I see people call me with 15 different private polls a day, statewide polls, congressional polls, you name it. It all confirms everything that we're seeing now. And you can see the fear in the voice of these Republican politicians. I mean, there's zero chance he's going to be reelected. Look at Peggy Noonan's column in the Wall Street Journal coming out tomorrow. The Wall Street Journal editorial page. Brian, you've been covering American politics almost as long as I've been involved in it. the Wall Street Journal editorial page is the go-to place for right-wing economic conservatism. It's gone. It's gone. And somebody's going to have to go tell this guy, look, you just can't risk the humiliating defeat that's going to come your way. And Jared or somebody's got to sit down and have a real talk, real man-to-man. Come to Jesus, as people used to say. I don't know what it is, but this is that which can't continue will not. And the Republican Party can't continue in this direction. They got to think of something different. I mean that. I'm serious.
I'm going to play for you.
Thought about what I was going to say. I knew what I was saying.
No, I understand that, and I appreciate your candor. You have a very delicate audience watching tonight that is hoping you're right, but almost doesn't want to hear you form the words and say it out loud. I'm going to play for you what Trump said about Biden tonight. We'll talk about it on the other side.
Sure.
Here's a guy doesn't talk. Nobody hears him. Whenever he does talk, he can't put two sentences together. I don't want to be nice or unnice, okay? But, I mean, the man can't speak, and he's going to be your president because some people don't love me, maybe.
So, James, let's be honest. There are some dedicated Democrats who brace themselves every time Joe Biden talks because he's halting and often imprecise. A lot of us are. He made a mistake today, meant to say 120,000. He said 120 million. President of the United States tweeted out that clip, and it's like a mob movie. You know the way they're going to come after you. You know, because you've said it on this broadcast, Biden has always been covered through a double standard, especially in the era of Trump. Is your party going to get tougher and hit back? Because thus far, the most effective ads are being run by your friends, the former Republicans over in the Lincoln Project.
Look, Democrats by nature are nervous. They are so traumatized by 2016. They have to get over it, all right? And I get this all the time. Oh, James, please don't say that, because if people think we're going to win, they're not going to come out and vote. That's idiotic. We're going to win. What do you want me to do? Come on television, talk to Brian Williams, and lie to people? That doesn't do any good. That's not part of my persona. It's evident to everybody what is going to happen. And part of Democratic coaches, well, we can't, but only to look and look what happened. And you're right, I'm a big admirer of these never-Trumpers, or the Bulwark people and the Lincoln Project people. They just get up every morning. Every time you call a Democratic consultant, they're on a conference call. Get off the conference call and do something. These guys don't do conference calls. They're out there attacking. And Biden's 120,000, 120 million. By the way, I can't. If somebody put a string of all Trump's gas together, you would have no idea where it would end up. Every politician makes gas. Every politician misspeaks. Biden campaign has actually been pretty good. He did pretty good in the debates. It's just assumed that the campaign is not good. I think their handling is pretty good so far. And, of course, he's going to make gas between now and Election Day. And it just sends the 25% of the Democratic Party into some kind of state of depression. Get over it. Toughen up, people. I mean, he's going to say whatever he's going to say. It is dropping at every level that you can imagine a politician's dropping. And that is just what is going on in this country now. I'm sorry. That's just the truth. Deal with it, Democrats. You're going to win.
All right. We'll give people a chance to run to their medicine chest. We'll take a break. James Carville has agreed to stay with us.
If he asked you to be his running mate, would you say yes?
Yes.
Obviously, I would be honored if I were being considered.
Yes, I'm qualified and ready.
I'm not sure I want the job as much as the job may want me.
I certainly would say yes.
There's a long list of possible VP candidates, all of them women. The ongoing protests for racial equality are fueling speculation that Biden may choose a black woman for a running mate. Still with us is James Carville. James, in the name of all that is holy, including but not limited to LSU football and your beloved U.S. Marine Corps, I need from you two honest answers. Who do you want it to be? Who do you think it'll be?
I want it to be whoever Joe Biden is comfortable with. And I don't know Vice President Biden well. I've known a lot of people around him very well. And he's somebody that picks people and sticks with him. He picks people he's comfortable with. He has earned the right. The Democrats in the United States overwhelmingly get ceded to him to pick. And whoever he picks, and I love these answers, by the way. Yes, of course I do it. Yes, that is the correct answer. If the country calls you, you answer the call. And I hear that from Senator Warren or Senator Harris or Leader Abrams all across the board, okay? I don't want to forget anybody, but that is all the correct answer. And whoever he calls, then that is going to be on what. And I have no doubt that he's going to pick someone he's comfortable with. He's not the kind of person he's not a very gimmicky kind of person. And I don't think people are looking for a gimmicky president. And I've said before in a kind of exaggerated way, I don't care, pick Sarah Palin. I'll be for her too. I just want to win this thing. But he has some excellent choices to choose from. And whoever he does is all pre-cleared with me. And it should be pre-cleared with every Democrat in this country, every independent, every never Trump. That's good. Throw the switch. Let's go to post.
James Carville, it's why we keep asking you back. Thank you so much for your time and your candor and your opinions.
Yeah, that's all
we'll
I can do is tell you what I think. I'd be wrong, but thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Someday LSU is going to play football again. Just you wait and see. James Carville in Louisiana.
So I want every single American to know, if you're sick, if you're struggling, if you're worried about how you're going to get through the day, I will not abandon you. I will not leave you to face these challenges alone. And we're going to get through this together.
What do you say to Americans who are watching you right now who are scared?
I say that you're a terrible reporter. That's what I say. I think it's a very nasty question, and I think it's a very bad signal that you're putting out to the American people.
Well, that's a contrast. This morning, we have numbers from 4 more key states, including Battleground, Florida, where Biden is up 9, and deep red Georgia and Texas, which look quite purple right now.
Yeah, you see the opening statement, and Donnie Deutsch, Joe Biden showing empathy, which, of course, Joe Biden is better than just about anybody on the political stage, showing empathy for good reason. He's the tragedy that he's endured in his life. And then you have Donald Trump, who is asked what should he say to people that are scared, and he attacks the reporter and says you're a bad reporter. He can't do it. But Donnie, I'm gonna start this Friday morning, and hope everybody's had a good week. We're going to start this Friday morning with just asking the question again: does this guy want to be re-elected president? Does he want to be there? There's nothing logical I understand about how Donald Trump acts, but he did know in 2016 when to be quiet, how to operate to at least keep himself in the game. He's not acting that way now. We're going to be talking about how he's trying to abolish the Affordable Care Act at the height of the rise in pandemic deaths, at a time when Americans are more scared of their health care. And in Arizona, he's stopping funding. Even Ted Cruz and John Cornyn are writing him a letter telling him he can't do that, as the Texas governor is telling Texas residents, stay at home. This is getting worse. It's getting worse in Arizona. It's getting worse in Florida. This guy that you and I have known for many years, he's not only is he not acting like he doesn't want to get reelected, he's acting like he really wants to lose badly and take the Republican Party down with him. I mean, none of this would make sense in the conventional sense. But you look at every single move he's making, he's on the 25% of a 75-25 issue, and it keeps happening every day.
Yeah, I mean, last night in that sham of a town hall with Sean Hannity, he was a big proponent of stop and frisk. If there's anything that shows somebody who could be so tone deaf to what's going on in this country right now, is somebody who's bringing up stop and frisk.
You've got to be kidding
Joe,
me.
Yeah, I mean, you go, this is, you just, and Joe, you said something last week that caught me, that somebody you said that a high-level insider in the White House said, you think he thinks there's a chance that, August, he's way behind, that Trump drops the mic and says, I'm not doing this anymore. I don't think that's going to happen. But you start to look at all of these breadcrumbs he's leaving behind, and you go, does this guy want to be? So then you go, okay, well, what does he do at this point if he does want to be elected president? Does he shift a reelected president? Does he all of a sudden come out and say, let's all start wearing masks. This is a big problem with corona, and let's all get together and kumbaya with race relations. And you go, can he even do that? Can Coke become new Coke? His brand is so entrenched at this point. The one thing you got to give this guy is he has created an authentic brand, and he's been consistent. And is it even feasible for him? Is it even credible, even if he could do it?
Yeah.
Stand up there, and he's so baked at this point. He's so baked in.
Yeah.
That I don't even know how he makes it move.
But that's not the point, though, Mika. He's bleeding in the polls at a precipitous rate. He knows, and his campaign knows, and Republican senators know, and Republican House members know, and local Republican officials who are running for office know what to do if they want to stop the precipitous slide in the polls. They can look at Republican Mike DeWine with a 75% approval rating. They can look at Charlie Baker in Massachusetts. They know what to do. Mika, I'm telling you, this looks like a deliberate attempt to drive his campaign into the ground every day. He knows what he's doing is going to lower the poll numbers, and they are collapsing every day.
So he can't do what Donnie was proposing, which is a last-minute pivot, but maybe someone else could. I mean, he doesn't want 4 more years. That's clear. You can tell by his behavior, his attitude toward the health of the American people. He doesn't want to be there. But what's the potential? Because he also doesn't like losing.
Well, I have somebody, again, as I said last week, that's in his inner circle that has told me for 3 years that Donald Trump fears losing a lot more than he cares about winning. And this person had said for some time, if it became obvious to him that he was going to lose, he would do an LBJ and get out of the race. Now, there is nobody, and we have a lot of news to get to.
I have to get to this.
We're going to get to the news. I'm going to ask Jonathan Lemire this, but let me just say this at the top of this show at 6:07. There is nobody on the planet that I have heard that is suggesting anything other than Donald Trump is running for re-election and he is going to be there until the very end. I'm just saying, this is not a guy who is acting like he expects to be around on January 21st, 2021 in the White House. And he is acting like he's setting everything on fire before he leaves. And I'm only saying this, nobody else is saying it, but I could see as a possibility, even a slight possibility, that this guy in August says what Peggy Noonan wrote a couple weeks ago. Listen, I gave you the best economy ever. And the press has been lying about me for years. They've been investigating me for years. And despite that, I did a great job. You guys do not deserve me. I'm going to do what LBJ did, and I'm going to leave. And that way, the only political race he has that people will judge him on politically is one of the great political upsets of all time. He and Harry Truman in 48. And he can walk away without a loss, where right now, if the election were held today, Joe Biden would likely win get 375, possibly even 400 electoral votes. Donald Trump does not want to carry that around the rest of his life. He wants to carry around the fact that he scored one of the greatest political upsets of all time. He's known when to leave the stage before. Again, I'm the only one saying this. I would not be surprised if he left the stage again. And again, I'm the only person saying it. I don't think it'll happen, but it's a possibility.
So let's get to the big news. Overnight came another move by the Trump administration, to your point, Joe, to strike down Obamacare in the middle of a pandemic. Amid the surging coronavirus pandemic and record unemployment, the Justice Department briefed late last night asking the Supreme Court to overturn the Affordable Care Act. The move came on the same day the government reported that nearly 500,000 people who lost health insurance during the coronavirus shutdown enrolled in coverage through healthcare.gov, a 46% increase from the same time last year. The legal brief makes no mention of the virus. Back in 2017, Congress eliminated the penalties that enforced the individual mandate. That was followed by a lawsuit from a coalition of Republican attorneys general led by the state of Texas, arguing that the entire law must be struck down, including popular protections for those with pre-existing conditions. Joe Biden, anticipating the Trump administration's filing in support of this case, had this to say at an event in Pennsylvania yesterday.
Perhaps most cruelly of all, if Donald Trump has his way, those who have complications from COVID-19 could become the new pre-existing conditions. Some survivors will experience lasting health impacts like lung scarring and heart damage. And if Donald Trump prevails in court, insurers would be allowed once again to strip away coverage, jack up premiums, simply because of the battle they survived fighting coronavirus. Mr. President, drop the lawsuit. Stop trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. Stop taking away people's health care and their peace of mind. Now more than ever, stop trying to steal their peace of mind. I cannot comprehend the cruelty that's driving him to inflict this pain on the very people he's supposed to serve.
Well, and there we go. Gene Robinson, there we go. I'm going to get to Jonathan in a second to get the reporting on this, but you tell me, Gene, what man or woman who wants to be reelected president of the United States decides when everything is going bad for him and his poll numbers are collapsing that he's going to choose this time in the middle of a pandemic that's killed 125,000 Americans, it will likely kill 150 or more by the time of the election, to actually work to try to take away health care for millions of Americans in a program that is actually very popular now. And at the same time, work to defund testing for states like Texas, Arizona, and Florida, and even get Ted Cruz and John Cornyn writing letters saying, Mr. President, now is not the time to defund testing. As Houston's top healthcare official said, this would be catastrophic. And yet Donald Trump's doing it. Can you explain it? Maybe you can explain it better than me.
No. Well, it's baffling, it's incomprehensible, and it is, if he does want to be reelected, it is the stupidest possible way to try to go about it. So look what he's doing. It's because he's not only doing this to himself, he's putting the Republican Party, on the side of taking away health care from millions of Americans in the midst of a pandemic. He's putting the Republican Party firmly on the side of structural racism. And specific racism, and the term Kung Flu, and the idea that all the protesters protesting police violence are thugs. He's putting the Republican Party not just on the wrong side of history in issue after issue after issue, but on the wrong side of this election, and you see it in every poll and what you've seen, and you don't have to take an individual poll. Just take the suite of polls we've seen over the last month, especially this accelerating decline over the last couple of weeks. He's trying to drag his party down to a historic defeat where it loses not just the White House, but loses the Senate, loses state legislative seats, loses the whole ball of wax. It is incomprehensible, and Republicans are going along with it. They're not really. I mean, they're writing little letters. Please, Mr. President, don't take away our testing for COVID, but they better start speaking out, and they better do something, because if they don't, I mean, we're getting into going off the cliff.
Well, off the cliff, and actually, the Wall Street Journal editorial page this morning. Thanks, John Heilman, for pointing this out. John texted me and talked about how the Wall Street Journal editorial page, of all pages, taking Donald Trump to task, saying Mr. Trump's base of 35% will never leave, but the swing voters who stood by him for 3.5 years has fallen away in the last 2 months. This includes suburban women, independents, and seniors who took a risk on him in 2016 as an outsider who would shake things up. Now, millions of Americans are close to deciding that 4 more years are more risk than they can stand. As of now, Mr. Trump has no second-term agenda or even a message beyond 4 more years of himself. His recent events were dominated by personal grievances. And then they go on to say, perhaps Mr. Trump lacks the self-awareness and the discipline to make his case. Jonathan Lemire, again, we've been saying it, a broken record. Donald Trump is looking at issues that are 75-25 issues, and he's consistently every day jumping on the side that 25% of Americans support and 75% of Americans oppose, stopping testing, federal funding of testing in states like Texas and Arizona and Florida, and now saying he's going to gut the Affordable Care Act. All of those things damage him with working class Americans, with middle class Americans, with suburban Americans, with black Americans, with Hispanic, you name it. Again, he's chosen an extraordinarily unpopular position to take.
First, Joe, I'll just note, you mentioned his lack of second-term agenda. He was asked that question in a pretty friendly interview from Sean Hannity last night, and he didn't have an answer. He just gave a sort of a rambling recounting of how he was inaugurated, and it devolved into an attack on John Bolton. What the president and his advisors have done, and let's be clear, let's be upfront about this. We look at the Battleground state polls, it's not working, at least right now. Their strategy is to double and triple down again on the base. The effort to repeal Obamacare is part of this. It was a 2016 campaign promise. Of course, it has not come to be just yet. We've seen a renewal in the last week or so of trying to really focus on sort of certain cultural or very deeply conservative issues in the president's mind, the issues that he thinks his base cares about, the Confederate monuments, defending those, the trip to the border wall this week in Arizona. I was part of that trip when he went and noted the new construction there. And what his advisors are doing is they're making this bet, and it's undeniably a risky one. They think about 40% of the country really likes Donald Trump. At a higher rate than the 60% or so who doesn't like him, but their feelings about Joe Biden
are more tepid. We know that enthusiasm polls, Trump usually does better than Biden in terms of the enthusiasm of their supporters. So even though they're coming at it from a smaller number, that 40%, that base, they think they can get more of those people to turn out than the rest of the country will turn out for Biden. But we're seeing here, of course, in recent weeks, as the president is reflected in the polls, his standing is slipping, not just nationally, but in those key battleground states, is that there is enthusiasm. And it's not necessarily for Biden, but that enthusiasm is growing against Trump. And that here is what is so tricky and risky about this play. But they feel like it's the only one they have. They don't think they can really change people's opinions of Trump, and that's why they're focusing on trying to please his base and try to drive up Joe Biden's negatives.
Actually, what they also know is they can't change Trump. Again, talking to people inside the White House, and you ask why does he do A or B instead of D, C or D, they will say, because if we go and try to reason with him, if we tell him not to do something because it hurts his cause, then we put it in his mind and he will immediately tweet on it. They have absolutely no control of him, and they don't give him good advice on restraining from certain destructive behaviors that would hurt his campaign, hurt his White House, hurt the country, because, and they're right, if they put that thought in his head of not doing something that's destructive, then it's in his head and he will immediately do it.
Double down.
So they have no control over this candidate who, again, continues to pick the wrong side of a poll issue and pick this, being on the wrong side of history every day. And again, Mika, you just got to beg the question. We're going to show these polls.
Yeah.
But Republican senators don't have to go along with this. They don't have to lose by 10, 15, 20 points. They don't have to. And one other thing, too, it would only take a couple of Republican senators to stop this madness. It's not like Republicans have a 10-point vote margin in the United States Senate. It would only take a handful of Republican senators saying, "This enough.
Yeah.
This destructiveness has to end."
So, speaking of the destructiveness, here's the result of all of this, as Jonathan Lemire was pointing out. New Fox News Battleground polls show Joe Biden is leading or statistically tied with President Trump in 4 key states. Biden leads Trump by 9 points in Florida, 49 to 40%. Biden is up 2 points in Georgia, 47 to 45. It's the same for North Carolina. Only 1 point separates Biden and Trump in Texas, 45 to 44. And these Fox polls follow the New York Times Siena College poll from yesterday among registered voters in 6 battleground states that Trump won in 2016. Biden is up 11 points in Michigan, 47% to Trump's 36%. Biden is also up 11 points in Wisconsin, 49 to 38. Biden has a 10-point advantage in Pennsylvania, 50 to 40. Biden is up 6 points in Florida, 47 to 41. Biden's leads by 7 points in Arizona, 48 to 41. And the former vice president is up 9 points in North Carolina, 49 to 40%.
So here we go. Gene Robinson, let's go through these from the Fox News polls that we talked about yesterday. Biden up 11 in Michigan, 11 Wisconsin, 10 in Pennsylvania, and 2...
New York Times.
This New York Times, I'm sorry, Siena poll, and 7 points in Arizona. Fox News poll has Donald Trump down 9 points right now in Florida, and him losing Georgia, North Carolina, and Texas. It's almost as if every warning we've given to the Republican Party since 2016... It's coming true, Gene. Every warning, and I love quoting Richard Haas when he said that the pandemic didn't change history; it has accelerated history. And states like Georgia, Texas, and Arizona really shouldn't have been competitive until 2024, even at this stage of the campaign. Donald Trump and this pandemic have made Georgia, Texas, and Arizona, well, I would say toss-up states. Arizona's not a toss-up state right now. Right now, that leans blue. But Georgia and Texas, we've had polls out of those two Republican states for the last month, month and a half that show it deadlocked.
Yeah. I thought it would be 2 more presidential year elections before Texas became a purple state, a genuinely purple state. Donald Trump has you're right. He is so accelerated history that these polls show Texas up for grabs, which is absolutely astounding. Who can, I guess that's a political accomplishment, but it's of the self-immolation variety. It's just incredible, and he will not stop. You're right. He either cannot or will not help himself. Jonathan mentioned the enthusiasm theory of the Trump campaign to drive up the enthusiasm of his base and try to get them out. But the more predictive figure is fear, really, and the polls indicate that more people are fearing another Donald Trump presidency than fear a Joe Biden presidency. And that is a real motivating factor. It was the opposite 4 years ago. The fear numbers, fear of the Hillary Clinton presidency, that was higher than the Donald Trump fear factor. He was an unknown. People were willing to take a gamble on this businessman who was so successful. But now that's completely reversed, and that's a very, very bad sign in these polls for Trump.
Well, and Donnie, the fear not only goes to Donald Trump getting reelected, the fear is from some people, a lot of people who supported him in 2016 who are now fearful for their own lives because of the 125,000 Americans who have already been killed by a virus that Donald Trump said was just one person coming in from China and would be gone. But now they look at scenes. If you're a senior in Arizona, and you look at scenes from that Arizona rally for Trump where young people are jammed into this auditorium, screaming and yelling and pushing the president to make racist statements, and very few of them are wearing masks, and you're a senior in Arizona, you understand that if everything we've heard about this pandemic is true, or most of it is true, that this is a super spreader event that will make Arizona sicker, will make communities and hospitals, their facilities more jammed, and will literally threaten the lives of senior citizens. Now, that's not political speculation. That's not ideological speculation. That's what Republican and Democratic doctors are saying, from Dr. Fauci, Dr. Oberholm, to any doctor that we get, Osterholm, excuse me, to any doctor we get on the show. So fear. So yes, the seniors weren't at the rally, but the seniors in Arizona saw the rally and understand that is a danger, not only to the people of Arizona, but more specifically to them.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yesterday, you were talking about the Churchill book, and that Churchill said when people are experiencing something, you can't twist it around. You can't go against what people are actually experiencing. So that is strongly why he's got a 50% strong disapproval rating versus Biden only has a 27% strong disapproval rating. Picking up Gene's point. Joe, I just want to go back to where you started the show, where your thesis that this guy is doing every single thing to lose, and you go, is there a chance he wants to? Let me just tune up a Trump thing. The one thing he's never been able to do with the presidency that he wants is monetize it. Imagine if Trump loses or drops the mic, and out of those 60 million people that voted for him, 6 million join the Trump Revolutionary Party and the Trump Revolutionary Network at $6.99 a month, and he makes $600 million a year. It's a way for him to come out and finally monetize this thing. And don't think he won't say to himself, I'm still the president of a third of this country, but I'm going to monetize it. Look for the Trump Revolutionary Network, $6.99 a month. That's Trump's drop the mic moment. It's not that crazy.
No, and I know you're laughing about it, but he's been thinking about how to monetize this from the beginning. He didn't expect to win. He was shocked that he won. And you're exactly right. If he can have a hardcore 35% of Americans believing his conspiracy theories, following him over the cliff as they have, even people with children who are sick following him over the cliff. I've never seen anything like it before in my life. Then yes, they'll pay $6.99 to listen to the Trump Revolution Network or whatever he would decide to call it. So you're laughing about it. I'm not laughing about it at all. I think he's looking at a loss, and he'd rather go out because he'd think he's more marketable. He'd rather go out doing what, again, LBJ did, and decide he's not going to run for re-election. And LBJ, when you talk about LBJ in campaigns, you only talk about his 64 landslide. Nobody talks about him getting out of the race in 68. So I'm telling you, Donnie, you're joking about it. Again, I think if you talk to most reporters, they'll say there's no suggestion that he's not going to drive this campaign to the very end. It just doesn't make sense.
Tonight on All In, absolute failure, catastrophic new virus numbers as Florida and Texas begin to close back down. Tonight, they were all warned and they all failed us. And it's time for this president to resign. Then it's not only red states, why California is suddenly locking down an entire county, plus abuse of force, why Colorado is suddenly investigating a suspicious death in police custody a year after it happened. And new polling shows why president's campaign of racial division just isn't working this time around. And All In starts right now. Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. In sheer numbers, the coronavirus outbreak is worse than it has ever been. Before this week, New York was the only state to ever report more than 5,000 new cases of coronavirus in a single day. But now, Texas, California, and Florida have all crossed that threshold on multiple days. And just today, Florida nearly doubled it, reporting almost 9,000 new cases. In total, we have set another single-day record in the U.S. for new cases, surpassing 40,000 for the first time. We have not seen these kinds of numbers since April, when, of course, the whole country was shut down. And for those weeks while we were shut down, night in and night out on this program, and all over the internet and in the media, epidemiologists and public health officials and local officials and journalists all said the same thing. The point of the shutdown was to buy time, to put into place the capacity so that we could open up safely. There have always been two doors available to us, two options, as I said before on the show. Door number one is an out-of-control outbreak that kills tens of thousands of people, sickens millions, and melts down the healthcare system. A once-in-a-century catastrophe. Door number two, also unappealing, brings us to an economic depression where we shut everything down to avoid complete health disaster. And we did that for weeks. The reason you do that is because you want to get to door number three. And many other countries have walked through door number three. It entails finding ways through contact tracing and testing, social distancing, and mask wearing to have some kind of normal life amidst the pandemic. The countries in that category that have succeeded, at least for now, they include South Korea and China, Taiwan and Hong Kong, Singapore and Vietnam, Australia and New Zealand, Germany and France, Italy and Spain and Greece and Belgium. Lots of countries have gone through door number three, but not us. We tried door number two. 40 million people lost their jobs. We bucked the curve, and then our leaders just gave up. Donald Trump gave up, just decided to pretend the virus went away. The federal government did not take the leadership role in beefing up the capacity necessary to deal with the virus. States said the CDC guidelines for reopening did not apply to them, and they were ready to reopen, and so they did. And so what is happening now is precisely what the health experts and the epidemiologists predicted, that the virus would come roaring back. Now, it did take a while, maybe longer than we thought. And in the interim, leading up to this point, there were a lot of preliminary victory laps.
I showed a green light today, and it's a green light to continue to go in the right direction. We are clearly on the other side of this pandemic.
The situation happening in New York is far different than what is happening in Texas and other places. For example, there will be, unfortunately, more people who pass away in one day in New York than we will have in Texas in the entirety of this whole pandemic situation.
You got a lot of people in your profession who waxed poetically for weeks and weeks about how Florida was going to be just like New York. Wait 2 weeks, Florida's going to be next. Just like Italy, wait 2 weeks. Well, hell, we're 8 weeks away from that, and it hasn't happened. So we've succeeded, and I think that people just don't want to recognize it because it challenges their narrative, it challenges their assumption.
Ah, yes. You idiots, you got it wrong. You said wait 2 weeks. We're 8 weeks. We won. We have succeeded, said Florida Governor Ron DeSantis on May 20th. Well, Mr. Governor, what exactly is success? Remember, the president urged all those governors to ignore his own CDC's guidelines. He told everyone, American citizens, young and old, that they should view themselves as warriors going out into the battlefield. And those governors went out and they listened to Trump. They dangerously stake themselves and their public reputation to optimism. And the cardinal lesson of this pandemic is that if you stake yourself to optimism, you will move too late and you will get eaten alive. We saw this in the last 4 months. We should not have to keep learning this lesson, but apparently have to once again. And so now we are in totally uncharted waters. And it's not because no other countries have had this challenge of a new outbreak. Many other countries locked down, reopened, and then had a new uptake because that's the way the virus works. But having touched the hot stove once, they did not touch it again. And so those countries took dramatic proactive action. In South Korea, officials closed all the bars and nightclubs in Seoul after just 40 new cases were linked to a man who went clubbing one weekend. In Singapore, schools and most workplaces shut down again after seeing just 1,000 new cases in a week back in April. Early this month, Beijing also closed schools and urged people to work from home after confirming just over 100 new cases in a week. We had 40,000 cases in this country today. We have gone through much of this pandemic looking at other countries' curves and trying to compare where we are in relation to them. Well, this is what our curve looks like. Almost no other country has done this. Locked down, decreased cases, brought the virus under control, and then come out and hit a new record on the other side. And we have an enormous population under the leadership of a whole bunch of different states, all making these decisions. But something has to change. The one remaining solace, which the administration has been touting, is that fatalities are continuing to slowly decline. And they are, and thank God for that. But is there anyone out there who thinks that trend is going to continue to be the case if we keep seeing 40,000 new cases a day or even 50,000, and if the hospitals keep filling up? What was supposed to happen was that we were buying time. If we went through door number 2, through tremendous sacrifice, the sacrifice of frontline workers and medical professionals and everyone who lost their job and every parent homeschooling their kid and every small business that was shuttered and everyone who just stayed home, through that sacrifice, we could buy time to put in place the governing capacity to make sure it would not happen again. We did none of that. We do not have the contact tracing capacity we need. We still do not have appropriate testing capacity. Look at this line for testing in Orlando, Florida today, before the testing site even opened. First car was waiting at 1 in the morning. That's how desperate people are for their health, to find out if they're sick. And drivers were advised to come with a full tank of gas and working air conditioning. The Washington Post reports that a drive-up testing site in Phoenix, Arizona, was swarmed on Saturday by about 1,000 people, leaving some baking in their cars for hours. And so now it is happening again, another outbreak. Today, Texas Governor Greg Abbott shut bars back down as of noon. He scaled back restaurant capacity to 50%. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis ordered all bars shut down in his state, too, where, remember, they have almost 9,000 new cases today. California Governor Gavin Newsom told Imperial County in the southern part of the state they should reinstate their stay-at-home order. We had three options. We had door number one with the pandemic rating out of control, door number two, a shutdown with economic destruction, and we could have gone through door number three. We could have found our way to some form of normal life. But our leaders did not do what was necessary to get there, and so we are stuck back with exactly the same horrible choice we had 14 weeks ago. At this moment, we are in the midst of one of the worst governing failures in American history. When all is said and done, it may end up being the worst since the Civil War. There is no country on earth this far into this pandemic that has bungled it this badly. And we need leadership and a leader to get us out of this. But we do not have that leader. We have Donald Trump. And from the very first day, this has been a terrible presidency. From the first moment, from the first speech, it has been terrible throughout, from his lawlessness and his incompetence, what he has done to immigrants and immigrant children, what happened with Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico, which is a canary in a coal mine, for putting his personal interests ahead of the country's, which is what he was impeached for, the constant attacks on the rule of law, the disgusting, despicable bigotry, and on and on and on. But we have reached a new depth. As coronavirus cases raced back up, the president ignored warnings from his public health experts. That resulted in tens of thousands of preventable deaths. And we're looking at tens of thousands more. Right now, we are seeing our chance as Americans to get back to some semblance of normalcy, the way other countries have with work and school and even sports. We're seeing it slip away because of Donald Trump. We are suffering through the incompetence of a man who took a huge inheritance and squandered it on stupid, glitzy investments and bankrupted his company 6 times because he was not up to the task. If this presidency had creditors, the virus's resurgence this week would have been a default event. Only it is not his creditors who are suffering, it is us. It is the people who could have survived this virus. It is friends and loved ones in nursing homes, and the people on the front lines, and the ones working in meatpacking plants, and the ones serving time in prison. It is everyone who has lost a job and every small business that's shut down. Things are falling apart because of him, and Republicans know it. But all they do is complain about his tone, or they send some passive-aggressive tweets while professing their loyalty. The problem is not his tone. There is not going to be some course correction. Donald Trump does not learn. He is not going to get good at this. He is not going to change. He has failed definitively. And it is an urgent matter of public health, of public safety at this moment, for the president, Donald Trump, to resign.